Let's get started. We are Lisa and Vanessa, and today we'll talk about text automation. And we'll also talk about testing in an international environment. Akkusys is operating in numerous countries, and we'd like to introduce to you several processes that we use. We use AX, for instance, for automation, and we carried out some tests in this respect. All right. We are going to introduce ourselves first. Then we are going to address the issue of internationalization. We are going to introduce Akkusys, our company. And we will look at important aspects as regard business internationalization. Then we are going to introduce to you how we use AX Semantics in an international environment and how we use DeepL, which is interesting, especially as regards product descriptions. And then last but not least, we will look at testing, our testing that we did with Hotjar and with A/B testing. We are looking forward to giving our presentation today. So I'm Lisa. I'm team lead of online marketing at Akkusys. I've been working at this company for 1.5 years. And before I worked at Otto, where I learned to know Vanessa. I am taking care for online marketing aspects, content, SEO, etc. But before at Otto, I worked at the field of SEO. I am Vanessa. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm head of e-commerce and online marketing at Akkusys. I've been working here at this company for 1.5 years, but we got to know each other at Otto. I also work in the field of SEO, and then I changed to Akkusys, and now I am also working in different and various areas. So what is Akkusys? Akkusys is a B2B company for batteries. It is a distribution company. Akkusys is a very versatile company. We have various web shops and different companies that also cover the B2C area, like online battery market, etc. In Spain, we have representatives in Austria, in the Netherlands, in the UK, and also in Italy. And we want to promote our international market. But with our international companies, sometimes we have difficulties to write international texts, but we also have contacts in these countries. But our online marketing is responsible for online marketing in these various countries. So much for our approaches. Let's look at product descriptions. So how do we work with AX? What does work well for us? Let's first look at different aspects that are vital. The translation of keywords. It always depends on the products that we are working with. Batteries, they don't have that high search volume, but translation is vital. It is vital to look out for meaning, for differences in meanings. In Spain, you say coche, and in Mexico, you say carro. It's like car and automobile. It is vital to stay in contact with native speakers and to discuss these issues with them. And that's what we do. We work closely with our partners in these countries. Native speakers are giving us advice on our product descriptions. Should you don't have any native speakers in your team, we would highly recommend you to stay in contact with them and to let them double check your texts in the end. All right. Vanessa just told you that we do a lot from Germany. So Germany is the source country for our product texts. Let's say we have car batteries, motorbike batteries, solar batteries, etc. We have battery storage, and Germany, this is the country where everything begins. So we create our texts in German. So the syntax is created in German in AX. And then if we want to have the text in various different languages, we often use DeepL to translate our text in the desired target language. This is a tool that helps you to quickly translate your text in various languages, because it is really expensive also to have various translation agencies on board. So this is why we use DeepL. But it is vital to have native people proofreading your texts, because sometimes there are translation errors. Translation errors occur when using DeepL. So then we check the syntax and also the grammar, and we have native speakers who help us in this endeavor. And then we add the text to AX. This is something that works very swiftly. And then we create our product descriptions in the new language. And then again, we have native speakers who conduct some quality checks. This helps us to ensure that we have high quality texts available. And then we have the final product description. This is what this approach looks like. This is an Excel table. We add data. This is a syntax. Well, these are sentences that we use and that we present to native speakers for quality checks. We have 154 sentences, and we translated them into Italian. This is one approach that we have. This is how we use AX, for instance. Let's also have a look at DeepL. So we started out with DeepL, and the approach that Lisa just described, this is the approach that we had afterwards. Yes, we do have native speakers in the various countries, but they don't have a sufficient content know-how. So we have people who know the language, but we also need to have people who know the content well. So it is expensive to write 250 texts by native speakers and to conduct the quality checks. And for this reason, we also had a different approach that we followed. So reading some sentences is possible, but reading entire texts is also very time consuming. So what did we do first? Internationalization. We thought this would work swiftly. We have a new online shop in Italy. We went live last year in Italy. The shop was supposed to go online swiftly. We had German product descriptions, and some of these products are also sold in Italy. We have a Shopware 6 shop, and of course, we didn't have time to translate all the texts into Italian. There is a plugin with DeepL in Shopware 6. So we add all the product texts to this tool, and then we have the Italian translations at our fingertips. So we get the translations just at a push of the button. All right, but there's also a downside. This is an example of one of the texts that we had translated. I don't speak Italian, so it is really difficult to proofread these texts. So I don't understand Italian, but despite this, we had some texts that we translated back into German. And some results were ridiculous, and some of these results were just embarrassing. This one, for example, Svandaci. In German, we have these. What are the advantages of these car batteries? But in Italian, we have svantaggio. Svantaggio means disadvantages or downsides. And I translated these texts with DeepL from German to Italian, and we translated it back from Italian to German. And we saw and realized that there was a translation error, an embarrassing error. So I'd like to give you another palpable example. This is a video. At the beginning, I told you that we used the German texts and then we translated them into Italian. But it is not that easy. This is the Italian website. If you scroll down, you see the text, and there is a PDF file that is linked. And we end up in a different web shop at onlinebattery.de. This is, so we have a link from the Italian page to the German web shop. So this is not desirable. So the links did not work. We see that this is also not perfect, because this also might lead to legal issues if you have wrong links on your web page, because there is a legal basis that we have to consider and keep in mind. So this is why we realized that DeepL is not the perfect solution. And this is why we adopted this approach that Lisa just presented to you with AX Semantics. Some of the non-important product descriptions are still translated with DeepL, but the more important product descriptions are translated differently and are checked by native speakers. So this is the direct comparison. Okay, so much for DeepL, just to give you a flavor of how DeepL works. With AX, in comparison to DeepL, you see that we have higher costs, several languages for about 800 euros. The initial effort is higher. You see that it takes more time to work with AX than to work merely with DeepL, but it is easier to maintain products and to add new items. And of course, language skills are required. If you don't have a native speaker, you might consider to have people that work for you externally, and you have error-free text at the end of the day. DeepL, it is cheap. You pay only 5 euros for the plugin. The initial effort is comparably low. As regards new products, you have to add them manually, but no language skills are required in general. And yes, there's no quality checks. We have no quality text here, and there were some of these texts contained translation errors. All right, so much for that. We don't want to look at this only in theory, but we also want to understand what our customers think. And for this reason, we did a test with Hotjar for our Italian texts. Allow me now to introduce to you the test. It's a test on our product descriptions. We looked at the Italian text that we translated with DeepL and then adapted with AX Semantics. So we wanted to know whether our consumers read our texts and what they find interesting and how they experience our texts. Don't they read our texts, or do they read our texts? So this was essential for us to know, because we wanted to know whether we could just use DeepL or whether it's worth using AX Semantic. So this is on this slide, you see the old text and the new text. With DeepL, we just translated the text. We couldn't change the format of the text. All texts that were translated with AX Semantics were formatted perfectly. We could adapt the heading and different paragraphs, and the general layout was better. The design was nicer in general. In this example, you see one article, the old version and the modified version. So what is Hotjar? Hotjar is a product experience insight tool. They map movements, the movement of the cursor, for instance. They track what people click on and how far they scroll. This is very insightful because it helps us to understand how customers respond to our product texts. One thing is very important. It is important to have the same people clicking on the text, on both texts, the old and the new version. This is vital to have a true comparison, because otherwise this would have an impact on the test result. Another thing that we realized was that 50% of the texts tested had more interaction. 40% nothing had changed, and 10% then we had less interaction. On the left-hand side, you see the movement of the cursor. You see a heat map here, because the user generally reads with the cursor like we manually do with our finger. And this tool tracked the movement of the cursor. And then on the right-hand side, you see that people move the cursor from right to left, that people really started to read the text. This reveals whether our texts are interesting and whether people read our texts actually. So of course, it is not possible to have these tests for all of your product descriptions, but it really gives you a flavor of how consumers respond to your texts. All right. We also did an A/B test because we wanted to look at the facts and figures. This is a text for online batteries from our German web shop from the B2C area. On the left-hand side is the old text, and the right-hand side the new text. The old texts were manually written, so all texts were of a high quality, but there was just one person who wrote all the texts. It's just bear in mind that we have thousands of products. We don't have the time to write all the texts manually. And because of that, it was vital for us to have the same performance with the old text that was manually written and the new text that was automatically created. And this is the result. We used the online platform Google Optimize for A/B testing. We tested it for a duration of 50 days at the beginning of last year. And we see that no better variant was found. So the new texts were not better, but also not worse than the old texts. Our main KPI was add to shopping cart. So the conversion rate was how many products were added to the shopping cart. The old texts were a little bit better with 22% in comparison to 7.97. But this is not a significant result. And for this reason, both groups are evaluated the same way. Then we used analytics. We looked at the conversion rate. So what exactly was bought? And we see that the variant 1 has a higher conversion rate than the previous group. This means that more products were sold with the new text, but the result shows that this is only a minor difference. So what is the bottom line? We saved time. As Vanessa said, no one needs to write these tags manually anymore. And for this reason, this was a huge success. This test showed that it was not better than, but the text did not perform worse either. So we saved time by just changing the syntax a little bit, by individually adapting our texts. And we have the same performance. And our customers are as satisfied as they were before. Okay, we're a little bit pressed for time now. So let's wrap up here. This is a very insightful presentation, so please go ahead, use the time that you have. You don't have to speed up. We are still excited to listen to your presentation. But that's basically it. We are at the end of our presentation, but we now have a little bit time for questions. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you very much for this insightful presentation, for the amazing results that you've shown to us. Before we have time for questions, I'd like to say something. You didn't generate the link on the PDF side, right? You just had the link from the former site that were just put on the new site. All right, I didn't know that this would happen. Yeah, we neither. So this was a very good test. It's a very good point here, DeepL or AX. Now, this is also a good point that I can mention. AX has a clear advantage here. So thank you very much, both of you. I also was intrigued by your analysis with Hotjar. You see, you showed that you looked at the conversion rate and also at the general results. So what do you say? How do you assess these results? So you saved time. We didn't expect these results, to be honest. The first text, the original text, was written by humans who were very experienced in the area of interest. So they were familiar with the product they described. So these were high quality texts that we compared with the machine translations and machine text creations. So if someone creates texts with AX who's not familiar with the product, they will also have difficulties to describe their text perfectly. That's for sure. But of course, I see the advantages that you mentioned. Are there any questions from the floor? I also like the process that you presented to us. Of course, it takes a lot of effort to produce texts, that's clear, but it will pay off, definitely. Just imagine that you enter new markets in different countries. Yeah, there are new countries that we are looking at. I think European countries, yes. So you have the domain, you have the web shop, you have everything that you need. You need the content, you know what you want to sell. So what do you think? How long will it take for you to have the new shop online as regards the product content? Of course, we'd use DeepL to have the baseline here. It is easy to use DeepL, but we then use AX to adapt our texts. This will take us 1 month or so. So a new country just in 1 month, that is really impressive. Just imagine how it was a couple of months ago or years ago. Yeah, this is a huge change. Definitely, yes. That's what Tudor showed us last time. Tudor from SkatePro, your colleague, so to say, an AX expert from SkatePro. He speaks numerous languages fluently, but unfortunately not 17 languages. He used DeepL first and then used AX. And this is how he improved their web shop. So that's a similar process to yours. But he did everything alone. Yeah, that's really impressive what he did. All right. If there are no further questions, okay, there is one question. Do you see the question in the chat? How many native speakers do you have per country? That's the question. One native speaker per country. 1, 2, 3 maximum. Most of the time we have the CEO or some employees in the country. 1 or maximum 3. They look at the text just once, they look at the syntax and then at the final result. They only look at the DeepL translations. It's only, they are not familiar with AX. We use AX. So they just look at the syntax, but they are not familiar with AX. Thank you. All right, that's what's written in the chat. Okay, perfect. There's another question in the chat.
Die Frage geht nochmal zum Zeitersparnis.
A question as regards the time that you save. How much time did you save? It's an ongoing process. We have to write a text manually for each new product. So that this takes about 30 minutes. Some of them only take 15 minutes. It depends on the product. With the more complex products, we need about 1 hour to write a text. So it really depends on the product. It takes an effort to just write the German syntax. I look at different parallel texts. I look at texts from other companies. How do they describe their product, for instance? And then we also have to look at our data and maintain data. So to have the sentence structure ready, it takes us about 3 months to have everything ready. Also, if you consider that we also need to gather and collect data and to maintain it and process it. So afterwards, everything is done. So once our product is ready, once our product description is ready, there's nothing more that we have to do. So we definitely do save time. In Germany, we have 3 B2C shops. And we developed this process for these shops. We have less important shops. And for these shops, we weren't able to write text for them manually because we didn't have the time to do that. So we just wrote 1 sentence, for instance. But we now are able to write different texts and unique texts for these web shops. So we can work more and achieve more results now. I have another question. Do people like that you automate texts now, or are there also people who are not content? Okay, we didn't have a texter who is now unemployed. No, that's not the case. but we have now people who manage the products, who add the products to our web shop, and they are content that they can now focus on other things. We are now focusing on further projects and further products. This is really nice to hear, and that's absolutely vital, yes. Okay, Heike, are there any further questions?
Genau. Jetzt sehe ich auch gar keine Frage mehr.
There are no further questions. Should there be another questions, I can read them out as soon as the question is there. I'll now look at our survey. Our question was, what do you prefer, creating text automatically, writing them manually, or do you prefer using both approaches at the same time and mix them? And what's the result? 33% of you, of those who participated, prefer automated text creations. 13% prefer the manual text production, and 53% prefer a mix of both approaches. This is what I expected. And this is the nice thing to see, that you can use both approaches. You can automate some processes and at the same time write some of the text manually. So the mix is a good idea. But creativity is also required when creating text automatically. This is true, but a mix is a good solution. This confirmed my idea, and this is the result. Yes, okay. Vanessa and Lisa, thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. It was really nice to have you today. Thank you for your presentation.